Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about that 16-team playoff that's gaining a little bit of traction in the SEC and the Big Ten offices. I don't love it. I'll be totally honest with you. Wish we could go backwards. We're not going to go backwards. So the hope is that when we get to a 16-team playoff, and it is when, not if, I can promise you that, when we get to that number, hopefully it's set up as well as it possibly can be. And I think they have an okay idea, at least as of right now. We'll get into more details as it gets a little bit further down the road, but right now, not in favor, but going to be along for the ride, and we'll just see if we land in at least an acceptable position there. But let's get into the sports commission because it is a massive, massive deal, and just a little bit of a overview for a headline that is a little bit old right now. So maybe you've forgotten about it, or maybe you didn't even know that this was happening in the first place. But details are essentially this: President Trump went down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to do a speech at one of the commencement hearings for the Crimson Tide about 2 weeks ago, and met with Nick Saban while he was down there. In the time since, he has set up what's called an NCAA Sports Commission. At least that's the way that he's called. That's the way it's being dubbed. And he is tabbed Nick Saban as a co-chair for that commission. The other co-chair will be Cody Campbell, and that's a very interesting figure that we'll talk about here in a second. But want to get into Nick Saban here for a second. I understand. There are a lot of people that don't love Nick Saban. I understand it's for a number of different reasons. I am a Georgia fan. I went to Georgia. I fully understand that there are a lot of Georgia fans that will never like this man. The other reality here is he fully understands what's going on in the sport. He fully understands how hard this is on coaches and how us losing a lot of the great coaches we have over the last couple of years has hurt this sport in a lot of different ways. That is a piece of this. I fully understand that so much of the energy is going to be put towards players' rights, and it very much should. That should be where the conversation is. But the reality of the matter is, very few people on planet Earth understand every single side of this issue more than Nick Saban, and understand the pitfalls for the players, understand the pitfalls for the coaches, understand the pitfalls for just the sport as a whole. And there's very few people that care about the players, the sport, and the coaches as much as Nick Saban does. That's just the reality of the situation. I understand people are super upset, saying he wants to just send it back to the days where Alabama was dominating. He's not trying to do that, I promise you, because Alabama, they can dominate in this era. I can promise you that. It is not this era that is holding Alabama back. It is a number of other things, and Nick Saban just wants what's best for the sport. I firmly believe that. Maybe I'll have egg on my face in a couple of weeks, but I'm more than fine to trust Nick Saban with the future of the sport. The person that will be going with him is Cody Campbell, and a very interesting figure. Played football at Texas Tech back in the day and has since become a mega donor and a board chair for Texas Tech. He is a huge reason why Texas Tech is a big deal going into this year, and we'll get to talk about them in the next segment. But the reality is a very, very prominent figure kind of behind the scenes in the sport. You might have not heard this name before he popped up around this kind of project, but a very, very pivotal figure, a guy that absolutely has spoken a lot about NIL, the pitfalls that come from that, but also isn't necessarily anti-player, isn't just trying to take all the money back and isn't trying to, shortchange players by any means. He just understands that this is not a system that works for very much longer. Obviously understands money, obviously understands markets, and he's someone that I think could be very important to this. So there's a lot of different things to kind of come out from this. There's a lot of things that could never come out from this. The reality of this project is there are a lot of things that they're going to have to get over even to get to a point where they can enforce rules. So we're going to have to be a little bit patient here. But there are two things I can say with absolute confidence. I understand being skeptical of this. I totally get it. I totally get being skeptical of the people putting it together. I get all that. There's no argument there. You are more than welcome to those feelings. But the reality is there's two things I can say with absolute confidence. One, this gives us a shot. It gives us a shot to fix the sport that we all love the most. It gives us a shot to do some really, really incredible things. And I'll talk about the incredible hypothetical at the very end that could come from this. Number two is there's 1,000,001 pitfalls that they're going to have to get over to find a way to really put it all into action. So this is going to be very hard. That's the reality of the situation. And the biggest hurdle that you're going to find throughout this process is the antitrust exemption. It's something that has been a story in the NCAA. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it vaguely throughout different news stories and, different court filings and things that have been going on in the sport recently. But the reality of the matter is that antitrust exemption is very necessary for college football right about now. We're in a position where we cannot apply any laws across the board or any rules across the board when it comes to NIL across the country because other states have different laws. So Georgia has a little bit more lenient NIL laws than, let's say, Illinois or some of the other states out there. So it's a battle. You have to find a way to be able to put rules across the board, across every single school in America, while still not going against the state laws. And that is impossible to do right now. It just genuinely is. A number of people have tried to do it. There have been a number of antitrust lawsuits. A number of people have made quite a bit of money from the antitrust lawsuits that have gone on the last little bit. You have to get over that hurdle. If you're going to get anything, at least anything genuine done from this group, you have to get over that hurdle. It's going to be a hard hurdle to get over because the reality is if you don't, this could be a huge nothing burger. It could just be a couple of guys in a room every week just talking about things that have already been talked about and bringing up things that have already been brought up, and it could be a mess. I'm not arguing that by any means, but I do think there are a lot of different things that can come from this, and I think if you get that antitrust exemption, let's just say they find a way to get that done. If they get that done, a lot of things can happen right after that. A lot of different rules can be put into place to make sure that kids are, doing things by the book, make sure that they don't get crazy huge benefits for not doing anything, to make sure that NIL is not being used as a recruiting chip, at least in terms of kids that are already in school or already playing for another team. Another team can't come in and swoop in and offer them money because they'll get punished for that. All of those things are just genuinely impossible for the NCAA to do right now. They don't have the power, they don't have the governmental power to do it, and they don't have the antitrust exemption to do it. You have to find a way to get that. This is a step in that right direction. I know the MLB has an exemption that has helped them out a lot and made it a lot easier for them to all work under kind of at least the same rules, the same set of rules, and that's something college football needs very badly. The other part of this that could be just incredible for the sport in so many different ways, and something that we'll talk about here in a second because there's a little bit of outrage around this, is if we get into the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961, which won't get into details of how that works, but the reality is, if they were able to kind of make that a reality and make that something that could be enforceable in the college football world, that would mean college football could pull together and be one media deal. It wouldn't be the SEC is with ESPN and the Big Ten is with Fox and CBS and the Big 12 is with Fox and ESPN from time to time. That's not a reality anymore. At least if they can get this into the fray and get this to be a part of college football, it would be everyone. It would be every team in the FBS or maybe every team in the Power 5, depending on the way that they looked at it. But every team would have the same media deal. You would play around with it from week to week. It wouldn't be if you're an Ohio State team and you're playing an elite game on week 1 or week 2, you're going to be at noon because that's where Fox's slot is. Or if you're an SEC team and you're playing an elite game, you're going to be at 7:30 because that's where ESPN's best slot is. That's no longer the reality. That would not be the reality any longer. You would have the ability to say, Ohio State's playing Texas, we'll put that one at night. And then Syracuse, Tennessee, you can go to Fox. And Fox, you can broadcast that game at noon. Or Alabama, Florida State, CBS, congratulations, you get that one at 3:30. Whatever it is, the reality is you wouldn't have these really stringent media deals. You would have a media deal for all of the teams in college football, for all the teams in the Power 5, for what have you, but you would have everyone getting the same amount of resources from that media deal, and you wouldn't get caught up in all the craziness that does come with a lot of the ridiculousness that comes with that. But it would be a huge thing. And I think the other part of this is who's going to join those two guys. And that is a big piece of this, whether it's going to be Kirk Herbstreit or I know my guy Josh Pate is pushing for a spot, would be more than fine with him being on there. Whether it's, some players, I think that's a must for this commission. If you do not have actual athletes on that commission, whether it's current or former athletes, you're doing it wrong, plain and simple. No one understands this. No one is affected by this more than the players. You have to make sure they're in those rooms. So that's something that I definitely want to see who is going to be in that room. And then can we take this down? Can we take down the powers that be with Fox and ESPN and CBS and all these people being able to, I don't want to say ruin college football Saturdays because they do a great job broadcasting these games, but to kind of keep teams in boxes when it comes to media rights deals. So the reality of this is it is a huge step in the right, I don't want to say huge. It is a step in the right direction. It is absolutely a step in the right direction. It gives us an opening to have comprehensive rules, have a collective college football vision that doesn't just favor the SEC and the Big Ten, which I think all of us would be in favor on. Possibly rolling back a little of this realignment and getting back to some of the roots of college football a little bit further down the road, of course, but definitely could be on the table. And then the biggest thing, college football could have one media contract, and we couldn't get caught up in all of this craziness with Fox having to play the biggest game at noon, ESPN having to play the biggest game at night, every team only getting one good slot per day. We would have all the ability to play around with this a lot, play around with which games go which places, which networks get which times. It would be incredible, and it would be a very, very huge shakeup. So don't necessarily hold your breath by any means on a lot of this stuff, but that's the reality. It is a chance. It is a door open that we still got to walk through. We still got to walk through a number of pitfalls, a number of booby traps to get to the other side, but if we can get the antitrust exemption, if they can find a way to get comprehensive rules in place, if they can find a way to get rid of the media deals that take over this sport and make it a little bit upsetting at times, we have a chance to have a beautiful sport again, and one that has NIL, one that has revenue sharing, one that players make millions of dollars, but it doesn't feel like the main part of the conversation. It doesn't feel like every offseason we're talking way more about the guy that got $8 million from some college more than what's going to happen with the offensive line of Oklahoma. That's what I want to be talking about. That's what I want to get into. But the reality is a lot of it has been caught up with what's happening off the field. If this works, it could be an incredible, incredible thing that is the turning point in college sports going forward. If it doesn't work, then they could just be a lot of guys sitting in a room talking about things that they don't really need to be talking about. So it could be a very interesting thing to watch. There's no doubt about that, and we'll see how quickly all of this unfolds. I think there's quite a few hurdles to get over, so I wouldn't hold your breath too much, but there's a chance, and a very good chance to make really genuine difference in the sport. But a couple other headlines from around the sport real quickly. The Week 1 games that have been released in terms of their times is interesting by the very least. I know that top one is making a lot of people mad. Texas at Ohio State will be that noon kickoff. Something that we talked about just a second ago, that wouldn't be the case, at least in a college football media format. Fox would probably still get the game, but they would be able to broadcast it at night because they wouldn't have to worry about ESPN getting mad at them. They would have already worked that out. So that's something to think about. Definitely another thing, but disappointed, not surprised by any means that this game is at noon. I fully expected it. That's what's going to happen, and we'll see what happens. Still going to be an incredible game, but a little bit left on the chip there. But then you have Syracuse, Tennessee running kind of with that one in. Very different implications in this one than there were a month ago. Two new starting quarterbacks at both those places. Joey Aguilar at Tennessee, probably Steve Angeli over there at Syracuse. It'll be really interesting to watch what happens in this one. This one not in Knoxville, which is not ideal, but still will be a very fun game. Will be very interesting to see. You also have Alabama at Florida State, a game at 3:30 p.m., going to be awesome. There's no doubt about that. It's a very, very interesting one. If Bama loses, a lot of things go wrong in Tuscaloosa very quickly. I can promise you that. And then if Florida State loses, I don't think the sky is falling. I think people are looking at Mike Norvell very, very closely over the next week, and he better go on a little bit of run if they get beat, especially if they get blown out in that game. Then you have what I like to consider the creme de la creme of this upcoming season, LSU at Clemson. I cannot design a game that's much better than this one. It is an elite game, elite atmosphere, two elite teams at an elite time. It's perfect in every single way. Cannot wait for that one to get underway. Two Tigers. LSU has found a way to lose a lot of Week 1 games in the last little bit, so we'll see if they can get over that. And then one that made me mad as can be, South Carolina at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg at 3 p.m. on a Sunday. What are we doing here? Lane Stadium is one of the very best atmospheres in the entire country. You have a South Carolina team coming in with Lenora Sellers. I get moving it to Sunday. That's whatever. I understand that's part of the business in Week 1. How is this not a night game? How are you not allowing those students all the time in the world to hydrate? Let's just say hydrate for the time being, and get out there and have an incredible Sunday night. You're giving them a Sunday 3 p.m. It's just ridiculous. It will not help with ratings with the NFL going, or this will be Week 1, excuse me. But regardless, it is not the greatest time for this thing to unfold. Lane Stadium at 3 p.m. on a Sunday just does not hit nearly as much as any other time at Lane Stadium, if I'm being totally honest. So don't love that by any means, but we got kickoff times, which means we're about to be able to smell football, and that's a beautiful time to be alive. Cam Rising has retired from football, another big time thing that has happened over this past weekend. He is someone that will have a confusing legacy. I think for a lot of people, they'll remember the last 2 seasons where things didn't go his way. A lot of injuries, a lot of things that just got in the way, and it just looked really bad for Utah at different times. He was kind of a running joke for a little bit over the last little bit, but I need people to fully appreciate who he was and what he was to Utah for a number of years. He commits to Texas, goes to Texas for a year, transfers over to Utah, has a couple of injuries, has the COVID year, has a lot of eligibility, I guess is the best way to put it. Still had a piece of eligibility going into this year, which is incredible to say. But win back-to-back Big 12 Pac-12 titles, including a win over Caleb Williams, where I think both those quarterbacks were about to get taken off in a stretcher. Both those guys battled so hard in that game, but Cam Rising comes out with the win. An incredible player. One of those guys that every single time Utah had a big game, you got the best out of Cam Rising. And he's an incredible player. Now he's going to go on to coach his old team, Newberry Park High School over there in California. Fun little fact, Brady Smeagol, the Michigan commit, very talented 4-star quarterback. He's the quarterback there right now. So it'll be very fun to see what he can do at the high school level in terms of coaching. And I think this is a guy that you could hear about coaching in college football here pretty soon. Very smart guy, very smart football mind, and definitely someone I want to see around the sport for a very long time to come. And then finally, Jackson Cantwell, the number 1 overall recruit, has committed to Miami, committed yesterday. Mario Cristobal, just a massive pickup. The offensive line recruiting that he has been able to do has been downright incredible. This one might be the cream of the crop. This might be the best one that he has been able to pull in. And it sounded like it was a big-time NIL battle, and Miami won that by quite a bit. So a huge pickup for them, but regardless of the NIL part of this, Francis Mauanoa, incredible player. Samson Okunlola, absolutely going to be awesome. And then Jackson Cantwell, 3 guys that I think can just be incredible players for this offensive line for the next 4 or 5 years at the very least. So it's going to be incredible to watch what this kid can do. He will start as a freshman if I had to imagine. Too long, too athletic, just an incredible player. And Francis Mauanoa probably walking out the door after this year to the NFL. Jackson Cantwell could step right in and be their offensive tackle at a drop of a hat. So this is an absolute star. He's going to be in college for 3 years. He will be a top 10 overall pick. As long as injuries don't derail anything, he'll be an incredible player for a very long time. So a huge pickup for Miami. Definitely one that I think Georgia felt really good about going into the last couple of days. And then Miami found a way to swoop in and steal an SEC-type guy on the offensive line. They've been doing a great job of that on the O-line and the D-line. But Mario Cristobal continues to build it right down there in Coral Gables with quite a bit of help from his collective down there. But at the end of the day, whatever works is whatever works in this world. But an incredible kind of week of news, really. So many different things happening around college football, but that sports commission is going to be a huge one. It's going to be one that everyone's following very closely, one that could change the sport for the better in so many different ways. Also one that could be an absolute dud and be totally nothing for this sport. But we'll find out. I'm definitely crossing my fingers that they can figure something out. Nick Saban, Cody Campbell, and whoever ends up joining them. But let's take our last break and get into something a little bit more fun after this break. I did my post-spring top 10 last week. Want to get into 11 to 25 this week. We'll roll through it relatively quickly, but really hard list to put together. Feel pretty good about it, at least as of right now. But we'll break it down right after this, so stick with us.